Well, I think that was probably it was a carryover, a continuation, because I think, we've all heard of black lawyers who worked in post office all their
Mm-hmm.
life because they couldn't, uh, you know, get jobs in federal agencies or state agencies, whatever. But there were a lot of well educated, black men and women that had to take, other jobs, a lot of them in the government, mail carriers, whatever, to raise their families. So,
I guess I always concerned about. Oh, I look back on it now about the all the investigation and stuff that took place back in the '60s and '70s and had really affected us.
mm,
When I went to Neola Job Corps up there, up from White Sulphur Spring, I never forget. Um, Now, I told you Phil Carter and myself were real good friends.
mm,
And I wrote Phil Carter a letter about 2 weeks after I was there about how I was going to make some changes at the center. I was the recreation
mm,
director. I said one of the things we need to do is to integrate this all girls school down there in this is Covington or Clifton, like that. I wrote him that letter and didn't think no more about it. Forgot all about it. And then, lo and behold, later on, about maybe 2 years later, I was talking to the head principal, and he told me about that letter.
mm,
He said, "George, you watch what you do and watch what you said, because we know what they know about that letter you wrote down at the Phil Carter."
mm,
What happened? They steamed that letter open. Somebody steamed the letter open. I don't know who did it, but before Phil got it, they read it,
mm,
and I was always, it really got to me that these type of things
yeah,
happen. Like I wrote him that letter, and didn't think no more about it. Forgot all about it. And then, lo and behold, later on, about maybe 2 years later, I was talking to the head principal, and he told me about that letter.
mm,
He said, "George, you watch what you do and watch what you said, because we know what they know about that letter you wrote down at the Phil Carter."
mm,
What happened? They steamed that letter open. Somebody steamed the letter open. I don't know who did it, but before Phil got it, they read it,
mm,
and I was always, it really got to me that these type of things
yeah.
happen.
Well, one of the things that kind of has stayed with me all of these years was we had a state and ACP convention down in Charleston. And as you know, the conventions usually went about 3 days. And on Friday night, you'd have just a great big community meeting, a mass meeting they called it. So Herb Henderson, who was, I think, very, very good friends of Dr. Ben Hooks at the time, Herb had done a whole lot of work with NACP at the national level, and also here in West Virginia, he attorney out of Huntington. Well, we were having this great big program, and the church was packed. As you know, it was at First Baptist Church in Charleston, and uh, I think I was emceeing that night. So I recognized one of the congressmen from West Virginia, and of course Dr. Hooks was up on the dais, and he waved at him. And, you know, the congressman, acknowledged him and everything. So we were sitting, of course, the church sitting in the pulpit, and I noticed Dr. Hooks kept looking at this window. So I didn't know what in the world was going on, but he looked at it, kind of a serious tone. So he said, the Talbot said, "Go and see if you can get somebody to shut that window." Now this
Hmm.
was in August, and it was hot, but he had noticed evidently a light somewhere no window or whatever, and knew that that could have been some place where a person with a gun, a rifle or whatever, had perfect path towards him. And of course, he'd been everywhere in the United States, Mississippi, Alabama, and everything else. And evidently he was used to looking for things like that, whereas we weren't used to that. So I called, went down and talked to pastor, one of the officials in the church, and asked them to close that window because Dr. Hooks, wasn't very comfortable with that window being there. And, if he could see it, somebody, over the next street with a telescopic lens, they could probably see it too.
Now, was this the time when we did the marching down there? We had all the people down there.
No, I think this was state convention. We had a state convention. Of course, he had, he usually came to West Virginia. It's one thing I liked about him. He usually would come to West Virginia for the state convention and stay, a day or so. And he was always able to draw, standing room only crowd. Very, very dynamic speaker, a great leader and everything else. But he knew that evidently, throughout the years of experience as, top official and NAACP, that you've got to protect yourself. And whenever he went in the car with anybody, he was always very, very inquisitive. Who am I riding with and all like that. Of course, he knew Herb. They had a personal, I think Herb was his lawyer or whatever, one of his lawyers. And he'd always ask Herb, who is this, who is that, things like that. But, and I guess, that concern might still be, voiced by some of our national leaders today. But I know that he was very, very concerned and wanted that window wanted that window, closed. Because he didn't want nobody taking a shot at him. And it could have very well happened, just because Dr. King had been, assassinated.
Right.
So it could have been him too.